Good morning, everybody. Namaste and welcome to Jyotish and Devi ji, who are joining us for this Sunday morning satsang of In Conversations. And today's theme, friends, is a very interesting one, something which we face all the time: change. How do we deal with change? Internally, you might say; externally, as a doctor, I can tell you the body is changing all the time. We are never the same. And how do we deal with things which are external, internal at the same time? What have Paramahansa Yogananda ji and Swami Kriyananda ji shared with us? So it's a very interesting, practical, beautiful topic. And I welcome Jyotish and Devi ji on behalf of Ananda Sangha Pune and all our Guru Bhais in Ananda Sangha India. I'll invite Nayaswamis Bhavani now to please give a bouquet to Jyotish and Devi ji. Nayaswamis Bhavani is joining us from Pune, our temple in Pune.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you. Yes. Oh, they smell wonderful.
And I am based out of Pune also, but it's my very good fortune at this moment, friends, I am in Ananda Sangha, Bangalore, in our beautiful retreat center over here. So we all know Jyotish and Devi ji, they are our spiritual parents, but I want to say a few words introducing them in case any new Guru Bhai has come here. Jyotish ji met Swami Kriyananda ji in San Francisco in 1967 when Ananda itself had not started. Swami was living in an apartment over there, and Jyotish ji took classes with Swami Kriyananda ji over there, played the role of his assistant. And from there on, Swami Kriyananda ji involved him in outreach and all activities. Jyotish and Devi ji serve as the worldwide directors of our work and the dharmacharyas of our work. Swamiji put them in place for serving in that capacity and in that role. And we are so happy, so grateful, Jyotish and Devi ji, to have this satsang with you as we've had over the years. And I want to invite you now to please lead us all in a prayer and say a few words on this subject of facing change with joy in our lives.
Okay, first, let us greet all of you. It's a great joy for us to be able to connect even at a distance like this, which we are able to do regularly because it allows us to travel instantaneously, one might say. But we will also be coming in person to India in September, and we'll be there up through November. So I hope that we'll be able to see many of you at that time.
And as we do with all of these conversations, we welcome you into our home and in Ananda Village in Northern California. And we wish you could be with us in person, but this is nice as well. This is our living room, and on the wall behind me is a beautiful painting that Jyotish did called God's Boatman, and it's you can't see it too clearly on your screen, but it's Master on a very small boat on a very turbulent sea, holding up a lantern and to guide us. And this is, I think, how it's a fitting image for the topic today: how to face life challenges with joy. Because as we will talk in more detail, it's the light of God and Guru that enables us to find our way forward. So let's begin with the prayer now.
We'll begin with the prayer and then a brief meditation. Just follow along mentally with me. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda ji, we humbly bow to you all. Beloved Master, beloved Swamiji, we thank you again and again for the guidance that you have given us, for these great teachings, but most of all for your love, and the grace that flows from you. We ask that you help us be ever more in tune with thee and help us maneuver through all of life's changes, holding on to the hem of thy robe. It is that attunement above all which will help produce the joy that we are seeking. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's meditate together just for a couple of minutes. Well, friends, this is a very interesting and important topic that we're dealing with today. You know, all of us go through changes, and it is simply a part of life, and we can either benefit from those changes or we can be, plowed under by them. Master said that, first of all, he said, as all great saints and everyone knows, that change in this world is absolutely essential. And without it, life would become absolutely boring. Imagine a life where nothing changed. You know, the image the of heaven for some people is when you go to heaven, you sit on a cloud playing a harp and have this beautiful music. Well, that might sound good if you're looking at it from a very busy life where you're overburdened with tasks and responsibilities. Oh, if only I could just relax and play a harp. But imagine after a week, you're playing a harp. After a year, you're still playing the harp. After 100 years, because heaven is eternal, you're still playing the harp. It would become a hell rather than a heaven. So without change, life wouldn't be interesting. And Master even said that eternal joy, he talked about it as ever new, ever expanding joy, so that we didn't get a sense that when we went into unity with God and with God's joy, that it was just this kind of sameness. So change is inevitable and it's generally beneficial. But Master also talked about beneficial changes and destructive changes. And he gave a charming example. In the lecture, he must have been holding on to a glass. And he said, if I drop this glass on the floor and shattered, for the glass, that would be a destructive change. But if I took this glass and I washed it and I took a a cloth and dried it and polished it. For the glass, that would be a beneficial change. So there are beneficial changes and destructive changes. And we think that we know which are beneficial and which are destructive, but in fact, we don't know. We don't know at all. Generally, we view whether change is beneficial or destructive not according to the perspective of our soul, but from the perspective of our ego. And basically, we ask, do I like this change or I don't like this change? And if we like it, then we think it's beneficial. If we don't like it, then it must be destructive. But it is very, very commonly true that it's the exact opposite. Swami used to tell a story about a young woman in India who had a true power of healing. When she would pray for someone, they would become healed. And her own father, had diabetes, severe diabetes, and the family came to her and said, "You heal all these other people. Why won't you heal your own father?" And she kept resisting. But finally, the pressure became so strong that she prayed and her father was healed. Now, one would say, well, of course, that's a beneficial change. But the father had the tendency to have a desire for a dissolute life. So he left the family, he became a drunkard, and ended up spending the whole family's fortune. So that change that we think was beneficial became destructive, because we looked at it from the shallower level of the personality and from likes and dislikes. Who wants to have diabetes? Who doesn't want to be well? Well, of course, it's got to be good. Generally speaking, it would be. But nonetheless, we have to pull back and take a greater look. So what is beneficial change and what is destructive change? Beneficial change is something that draws us closer to God. And destructive change is something that draws us farther away from God. So in this sense, winning the lottery might be a destructive change, whereas one of the big changes in Master's life, a devastating change for him, was when he lost his mother. But because he took that as an opportunity, it awakened in him the ever deeper longing for his divine mother. Eventually, it led him to the vision of his divine mother coming to him and saying, "I have loved you through many mothers. These dark eyes have watched over you from incarnation to incarnation. And in many mothers, it was always me that you truly loved." So that very traumatic event for Master allowed him the opportunity to have one of the great spiritual experiences of his life.
Thank you, Jyotish. I'll share a few words too, and then we'll have questions and discussion with Bhavani and Aditya. You know, the wisdom of India, as presented in the Bhagavad Gita and all the great scriptures, there's a reoccurring theme, and that's that this world is not real. The world of the senses, the world of passing time, it's not what it appears to be. And when we think of, and that the purpose of each incarnation for all of us is to awaken from the dream and to evolve to our highest spiritual potential. And the role that change plays in this is to keep us kind of alert, because if it was always the same, we would grow despondent, we would grow not attentive. But because of the changes, we're kind of forced to say, well, yesterday I was healthy and happy, then today all of a sudden I'm sick and I'm unhappy. So where's the reality? Which is real? And time, as we think of it, as the little seconds on our clocks and watches passing, it's not a reality. As the only time is broken into little segments, but what is real is the eternal consciousness of God, which is unchanging. And there's a beautiful line from one of Swami's Kriyananda's songs. The song is Joy in the Heaven. And he says, there's joy all around us. Why wait for tomorrow? We've only this moment to live. A heaven within us is ours for the asking, a freedom no riches can give. And so if we're so concerned with, oh, yesterday was this and today will be that and what will tomorrow be, but we can only live in the moment, in the eternal now, as Master called it. And if we begin to accept that and look for the joy in each moment instead of thinking, well, I'm pretty miserable now, but maybe tomorrow I'll be happy, that tomorrow never comes. We can only live in the moment. And the more we are able to do that, to live in the moment, the more we can experience the eternal qualities, the changeless qualities, the soul nature, which, as it says in the Gita, fire cannot burn it, sword cannot cut it, water cannot drown it. It will not change, but it transforms. Transformation is different from change. Transformation is an awakening. Change is a delusion. And there's, in this dream in which we live until we awaken in God, we need to remember not to get too engrossed in it. And I'll just close. There's that beautiful poem of Master, When I Am Only a Dream. You haven't ever read it. It's in Songs of the Soul, and one of his books of poems. And it's a beautiful poem. Master feels like he's just speaking to us in the moment, but it ends with these words. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it's, when you know that you are a dream, as I know now, then we will both awaken forever in God. And so that's the whole point, to awaken from the dream of change into the eternal moment of now, and then to find the joy of God. So, Bhavani, do you have some?
I think Aditya.
No, Bhavani was going to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Jyotish ji and Devi ji, for that very inspiring prelude to our conversation. And you've shared many important points on change, and to start picking up on, each of those. One of them, you mentioned, change is inevitable. And from the time we come into this world, we experience changes, whether it is, from infancy to, adulthood. We go through changes in nature, seasons change, day flows into night, night flows into day. While we see that as part of the divine plan, that changes seems to be harmonious in nature, yet man struggles with change, though we know that it is a part of life. What do you feel we can do to overcome the struggle, to rise above the struggle, and to find joy in the process?
Well, it's a very deep question, Bhavani. So, change is inevitable, and we see change everywhere. As you say, we see change in nature. I'm not sure that nature accepts change harmoniously. Maybe it doesn't accept it very harmoniously and simply doesn't have the ability to complain about it the way humans do. But the law of momentum says that that which is at rest tends to stay at rest. That which is in movement tends to stay in movement. So nature itself tries to stay as it is without change. So I think change is just part of the fabric of creation. And as long as there's duality, which is the very fundamental nature of this world, of all creation, even starting with Om, there is the inevitability of change. And so the question is not how do we react to it? Does nature accept it harmoniously and mankind not? Whether nature accepts it or we accept it, if we accept change, then we can be harmonious with it. We can work with it positively. But even if we don't like it, the real topic tonight is not just change, but how to go through life's changes with joy. And joy is an element of the soul that is beneath the surface of likes and dislikes. As Swami said many times, that life is a battle for joy on the very spot on which we stand. And so change is forcing us, if we're wise enough, to look for joy beneath the surface, and in this case, beneath the surface of our current likes and dislikes, because we have to accept the fact that we don't have the wisdom to understand truly what's beneficial or not. But we can find our joy under the surface, no matter what is going on, even if it's unpleasant.
And, you know, in your question, Bhavani, you asked, when we look at nature, the changes seem to be accepted better. And I think I was thinking about that, and I think there is truth in that. But why? I remember seeing a video of, it was a wildlife video, and it was showing a female tiger running after, stalking a little gazelle. And, you know, the gazelle was running and running and trying to get away. And the tiger was obviously going to catch it because it was stronger and faster. And the little gazelle was trying everything he could. And then finally the tiger got it and had the little gazelle in his mouth, and the little gazelle was dead. But it was interesting because you could see in the gazelle absolute peace. It was you could see it. And why is that? Because by and large, animals don't have egos, and whereas human beings do. And so we think, why is this happening to me? Why did the tiger kill me? And so forth. Why did the boss fire me? Why did I don't know, on and on and on, all the changes in life. But it's when we get the ego out of the way, then we're not saying, why is this happening to me? We're just saying this is happening. And, you know, there's that story from the autobiography of this, when Master was on his interrupted flight to the Himalayas, when his brother finally catches him, and he and his friend are put in the little jail cell for a few days, a day or two. But one of the guards said, "Oh, you're going to the Himalayas to see Sikh saints. Well, you'll never find one greater than the one we met. We were looking for a murderer, and we saw this man strolling through the street looking like the description of the murderer. And we had our axes in our hand, and we yelled out to him, 'Halt, halt.' But he didn't stop, so we ran after him, and we struck him with the axe, and it severed his arm from his shoulder." That's a big change. Yeah. And he just put it back in, and he turned around and he said, "I'm not the murderer you're looking for." And he just walked on. And then he said, "I will come back in a few days and you will see." And there was not even a scar. But why? Why? I mean, most people would say, look what you've done to me. This is a horrible change, a destructive change. But this man, there wasn't any ego. So there wasn't anything to react from. And it all comes back, honestly, to living the teachings. It's not enough it's good to meditate every day. It's good to study Master's teachings, but then you have to live them. And that's the hardest part of all.
Thank you, Jyotish ji. And Devi ji, that was so beautifully said.
Devi ji, Jyotish ji, I have a question. You lived with Swamiji for so many decades, And as you went through life, sometimes there were big changes, sometimes small changes, like you said, Devi, sometimes on a day-to-day basis, things change. Can you tell us how we can prepare our consciousness so that when change comes, like there's a part of our mind that almost doesn't want to imagine change or almost refutes its possibility, but change will come. So how can we prepare our awareness to deal with it when it does come? And if you could give us some examples.
Okay, well, maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
Again, picking up from where we left off, the best way we can prepare is to live the teachings. When a change comes in our life, just if we're caught off guard, there'll be the reaction, and the reactive process gets stirred up. But if we can develop the habit, no matter what comes, to live, to, as Master said, be even-minded and cheerful. If we can develop that habit and work at it, it doesn't come. Spiritual evolution does not come automatically. It is, we have to give it everything we've got, but then it's the grace of God and Guru that pushes us over the top. But nevertheless, when look at the changes in life. There's the growth of an individual from infancy to, childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, maturity, and then old age. I mean, who can avoid that? You look at celebrities, and I'm going to be a little facetious here, but no matter how much cosmetic surgery you get, you're still going to age. The body's going to age. You can't stop it any more than the seasons. And we just need to understand that if we live in the sense of trying to diminish the ego through right attitude, through attunement with the Guru, through meditation, and through in daily life, not trying not to have your own personal perspective be the primary point of focus. And then when change happens, you just say, well, this is happening. And we saw Swamiji, one example I'll give you, and then Jyotish can say more. He had many, many surgeries, and he had arthritis in his hips. So he had one hip replacement surgery, and then he had second hip replacement surgery. But then the first hip began hurting, the hip replacement, and he went to see the surgeon. We were with him at the time. And the surgeon did some x-rays, and he said, oh, sir, I'm so sorry, but the femur, I think that's the leg bone, it's just not sitting right in the socket, and we're going to have to do it again. And oh my God, what a terrible thing, have to go through all that recuperation and surgery. Swami didn't miss a moment. The doctor told him that. He was totally centered, had a sweet smile on his face, and he said, oh, how soon can we do it, doctor? And then they scheduled it, and then that worked out fine. But it was so instructive just to watch his face. There was not a moment where there was, a reaction. It was just very good. Well, this is needed. We'll move on. And
in fact, later he made a joke out of it. He said, I should get a T-shirt. Now that I've had 3 hip surgeries, I should get a T-shirt that says hip, 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 hooray.
So in any case, we prepare. Meditation is it's the laboratory, let's put it that way, where we raise our consciousness, we try to offer our energy up to God internally. But then when we get out in daily life, we have to hold that. And that's not easy.
There's also an element here for our spiritual growth. And first of all, we have to get ourselves positioned to be able to accept with a positive attitude those things that our karma brings to us. Basically, all major things that come into our life are brought to us by our own karma, and they come to us for our spiritual evolution. And evolution is not necessarily easy. So part of change is to accept that it's coming to us for a reason, and then to gather the strength to face it, and to not just face it kind of as a victim, but face it in such a way that we take it on as a test that's going to allow us to grow. And there are three things especially that we need to develop in order to do that. One is proper discrimination, so that we need to look at the changes that are coming, and we need to say, why have I drawn this to me, to myself? What is it that this event is trying to teach me? And then once we accept, or once we see the change that's needed, then we need to put out willpower. Master so often wrote about and talked about willpower. Willpower, he said, is God's life force, God's prana that is in each of us. And the more willpower that we put forth, if it's in attunement with God, the more of God's presence we will feel, because will is his presence within us. And so we have to then, once we discriminate and take on the proper challenge, the proper attitude toward the challenge, then we need to go at it with a lot of willpower and a lot of strength. And then finally, Master said, we have to do it with perseverance, because our perseverance will be tested. But he said, and he gave many techniques of how to develop willpower, how to develop perseverance, take on small tasks, but that are difficult, so they're a challenge for you. And then absolutely refuse to allow yourself not to succeed in them. That will strengthen your willpower. Whereas if you get a little ways into it and you say, oh, this is too hard, I think I'll quit. If you quit, that weakens your willpower. So perseverance, you have to stay with it, and that will strengthen that flow of God within you until the power to discriminate, to put forth will, and to be able to conquer these things becomes so strong that literally you can change universes. Master summed it up in a very succinct prayer. He said, I will reason, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right thing, in the right path in everything. And so if we act with attunement and we have strong strength and perseverance, it will bring to us the spiritual victory that the karma has wanting us to achieve, and has therefore brought this challenge to us. So we have to grab onto these battles that life brings us with strength and energy and a positive mindset, and then we will grow spiritually enormously. An easy life is not a victorious life.
Thank you so much. It's almost, you make change so attractive. We should embrace, expect it, and overcome it. It reminds me, Jyotish, of Master's statement that do something new every day. So that you don't fall in the same rut. And thank you very much for that. I'll invite Bhavani to ask the next question.
Yes. Taking up the point of proper discrimination, Sometimes, like, oh, you mentioned in the beginning that without change, life would be boring. And sometimes we think, oh, life is boring. I want some change in my life. And we, take up initiatives, take up steps, sometimes that are beneficial and sometimes that are not, because we are using our likes and dislikes as a guiding post. So, how do we sharpen our discriminatory powers to be able to adopt change that leads us forward rather than allow us to stagnate or move backwards?
Well, I'll start and then Devi can continue, but we can discriminate mentally, and we should. We should try to be calm and look at things and use the best intelligence and wisdom. God has given us our intelligence and the power of the mind to discriminate, and we should do that as well as we can. The calmer we are, Devi mentioned a master's statement to try to be always calm and even-minded and cheerful. So if we look with discrimination at what's coming and we're even-minded and cheerful, we can probably discriminate more accurately what's happening. But the real power to see comes from the soul. And the soul's power of discriminating is through intuition. And there are many teachings. In fact, we have 2 or 3 books. Devi edited a book on intuition, and I'll let her talk a little about that. But intuition is developed through deep calmness, especially in meditation. Because it's the power of the soul, we have to make the shift from identification of ourself as the ego to more of a identification or complete identification of ourself as the soul. And when we make that shift, then the powers of intuition become stronger and stronger. And through intuition, we know the right action. And that plus staying in tune with God. Even Master said, many ideas come into my head of things that we could do, things that projects that we should do. But I always stop and ask Divine Mother whether she wants this to be done. And he said, because his intuition was developed, and she answers me. And only if she approves of something will I go ahead and try to accomplish it. So just because an idea comes in our head doesn't mean that that's what we should be doing. But use the best rational process that we can, discrimination, but also develop our powers of intuition.
Yeah, one very important point that we haven't touched on, maybe you were planning to ask a question about it, but why do we fear change? It's because it takes us into the unknown. If life were just predictable, okay, A, B, C, D, we wouldn't be challenged, but it would be familiar. But I know for Jyotish and me, because we do a lot of traveling, sharing master's teachings and giving satsangs in many places in the world, when you're traveling, you're always going into the unknown. Will the plane be on time? Where will we, all the questions that come. But we've had so many wonderful experiences meeting people and people that it just seemed like they were sent from God to talk with us for our own benefit, not just that we're helping them. And if life were always under our control, we wouldn't learn the lessons that God wants us to learn. And that's the main thing about change, is that our life is scripted by God. It isn't, we don't write the story of our life. And I read somewhere that actors and actresses who are in soap operas, they just get their lines that day that they're supposed to give on the part they play. And in a way, that's true of us too. We don't know what's going to happen. Will our car break down? Once a few years ago, I had a friend who had advanced cancer, and I had taken her into the hospital that day. She had an appointment for chemotherapy to receive it that day. And it was most of the day I just stayed with her in that part of the hospital where the chemo was administered. And then we were driving home, and she was very tired. You know, it'd been a rough day, and she was sort of had the seat reclined and she was sleeping. And all of a sudden, I heard this kapump, 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 and we had a flat tire in kind of in a very remote area on the way back to Ananda Village. It was unknown. What am I going to do? I didn't know how to change a tire. Here was my sick friend. I had to get her home. Just in that moment, I mean, really, a second didn't pass. This old beat up truck pulled up with these very scruffy looking men. And at first I thought, oh my God, are they going to rob us? But they just came over and they said, you look like you need some help. And I said, well, we do. I have a flat tire. My friend isn't well. They said, don't worry, ma'am, we'll change it. They changed the tire, 1, 2, 3. We drove off. I was kind of in a state of shock. But that was God's script for that day. I didn't plan to have a flat tire, but if we could just surrender, the underlying principle of change is to surrender your life to God and trust that even though you're going into the unknown, you don't know what lies ahead. Just say, Lord, I will put one foot in front of the next, even though I don't know where my foot's going to land, even though I don't know if this ground will support me. But with you by my side, I have faith and I have trust. So that's really the essence of change. We're afraid of what we don't know. But if we just can surrender and say, God, I am just like when we're little kids, you hold your mommy or daddy's hand. You don't know where you're going, but you just trust you'll be okay. Well, then we grow up and we think we have to do it on our own. But just hold Divine Mother's hand, hold Master's hand, and just say, I really don't know where we're going, but I'm holding on and you take me where I'm supposed to be. And it's a wonderful way to live, really, that you just say, I have faith in you, my Lord, in my Guru. And I know that whatever changes come with you by my side, I will benefit from them.
In fact, you might say, I will say, that the real reason for change and the real reason that change is scary is to help us develop faith. Master has a beautiful affirmation. I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. If we could live according to that simple affirmation, and it would be very good to learn it, memorize it, and repeat it until it really takes root. I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. Learn that and repeat it. And if you can develop faith, then life can't scare you anymore. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Jyotish and Devi. And brother, may I suggest a change in the flow? May I ask this question?
Absolutely.
Take the next two.
Absolutely, Bhavani. And also, you're closer to the computer, so if there are any questions in the chat, please
Sure,
take them.
sure.
And we invite you, friends, to type in your questions if you have, so we can take it up.
Yes. So following up, beautiful. Thank you, Jyotish and Devi. So this question arises, are changes predestined in our life? And how much do we
Are
influence?
they predestined?
How much do we influence change?
Well, I would say that major change is predestined. Now, predestination has to be understood that we have set forth karmic events and we come into this life with certain lessons to learn, and therefore it is predestined that we're going to bring to us the opportunities to learn those lessons. So the major lessons that we need to learn, the soul incarnates in order to learn those. So one might say that from the time of birth, there is a course that's set. Now, whether we will face every challenge, whether we will be successful in all of them. All of that depends upon the interplay of karmic, one might say the magnetism of karma to draw things to us, and the abilities driven by our free will to respond to those challenges in a positive way or a negative way. So we might be, one might say, predestined to learn the lesson of dealing with financial insecurity because we've been far too attached to it before. So we will draw into our circumstances in this life challenges that challenge our financial security, but we have the free will to adjust to those in a positive way or a negative way. So the challenges will come, but how many will come is determined. That's not predestined. So if we are able to learn our lessons, maybe we are able to save ourselves from many challenges that otherwise would have come to us because we no longer need that lesson. Or we get so strong that it comes and we just kind of laugh them off. Swami put it this way: if you're resisting your karma, it's like karma is coming and you're resisting and you go bang like that. But if you are learning from your karma, karma is coming this direction, or you're moving in this direction and karma is coming, and it just gives you a little gentle tap. So if we go with the lessons, if we learn the lessons, yes, it's predestined that that karma is going to come, but how much it affects us is not predestined. It's up to our free will.
Yeah, very good. I was having similar thoughts that sometimes when we use the word predestined, it sounds like something imposed on us, like we didn't have any part to play in it. But it's much more like that image Jyotish used, much more like a karmic dance, or like riding a bicycle. Let's use that image, where if we go too far in one direction, we have to turn the hand. If we want to stay on course, then we have to adjust. And so what the law of karma does for us, it helps us to keep adjusting. So if we've gone too far in the direction of, I don't know, of having uncontrolled anger, let's use that example, then we have to go adjust it by going, maybe being overly kind and serving people all the time and not thinking about ourselves. But it's always adjusting. So our change is predestined. Well, you can put it that way, but that kind of gives you a false image. It's really more saying, is there a plan for our liberation? And do the events in our life play into that plan? And that is definitely yes. There is a plan for our liberation. Every one of us, God, He created us. He gave us free will. We've made mistakes using that free will. And now there's a plan. Just as, I don't know, I'm thinking of like if a mother has a child that is always leaving a mess around, then she'll have to say, no, you have to clean up that mess to train the child. Well, if we've made a karmic mess of our life in the past, then Divine Mother will come in and say, no, you have to correct that. And it's not out of revenge or anything like that. It's just a matter of you need to the training we need to learn the lessons we need. And so, again, if we can see that if we think of life not as, is it our change is coming, will I be able to meet them, but just more, our destiny is spiritual awakening, is freedom, soul freedom. And everything, if we're sincere, well, whether we're sincere on the path or not, it's going to happen until we start waking up and saying, you know, I've tried everything else in life and nothing made me happy. I think I have to look for another kind of happiness that isn't dependent on if people are nice to me, if I have financial security, if I have good health, if I have friends around me. Those things come and go. But the soul's movement towards the unchanging joy of God comes through this process. And this process involves change.
And that joy is already within us. All we have to do is not create it, but learn to recognize it and feel it. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Jyotish and Devi ji. It little bit answered like this question. Sometimes people ask, and that it's like you're having a tug of war with the gurus. We come on the spiritual path, and there's this expectation somewhere subconsciously that the path will be smoothed out by the masters, or now that I have a guru. But certain tests come again and again, like you said, and I think that was a very good point, that it needn't be that way. If we are aware enough, if we can see that as our karma, and if we can learn it. So it's not coming from master repeatedly. It's like we are being perhaps stubborn in not accepting a certain attitude, so that change can be overcome. I'll take a moment, Bhavi, unless you can see questions in the chat.
Yes. We had one question on the chat, which was, how can we see God in change, in people and everything?
How can you see God in change? Well, it takes development. It starts with, I would say it starts with reading or listening to lectures where you hear wise people say that behind all appearances there's God. And Master says that in 1,000 different ways, in 1,000 different prayers or lectures or talks, writings. Swami does the same. So wise people will tell us that God is behind everything, and that everything, in fact, is only God in disguise. But hearing that gives us the intellectual ability to say yes, but we don't actually see that yet. And so our challenge is to move from, first of all, complete ignorance, where we don't even care about it. We move to the point where we do want to see God in everything. And so that, I would say, applies to probably everyone who's watching. We want to see the divine. We want to feel the divine. So how do we then progress along that? Now, our ignorance has been with us for a very long time. And so ignorance is quite deep-seated. And we aren't going to overcome it immediately. It's going to take effort and perseverance. I would say, honestly, that we have to do whatever we can. We have to meditate as much as we can, as deeply as we can. We have to serve. We have to watch out for our environment, that the environment around us is uplifting and helps us toward our goal. All of that is of great help. But for me, honestly, the most important thing is that we make a very deep and very sincere effort to attune ourselves to Master's will, or whoever your guru is. The guru is God's representative sent into this world to help you with achieve your liberation. So surrender to the guru, clinging to the guru, constantly trying to attune yourself to his will, and the surrender of your own will into that. All the other things are helpful, but this is for me, the central issue is ever and ever greater self-offering, dynamic, joyful self-offering into the, one might say, the bubble of grace represented by attunement to the guru.
And it's I think the way I would express it, rather than trying to see God as change, try to see God behind all the forms that change. There was a beautiful story that Swami used to tell of a sadhu that lived in a small forest ashram, and he had a small but very devoted group of followers that were with him, and they took very loving care of him. And one day he said, I'm just going to go for a walk, go through the forest and go for a walk on my own. And so he went out by himself, and unfortunately, he was beset upon by a group of dacoits. And they said, they demanded his money. Well, he didn't have any money, but they said, if you don't give us your money, we'll beat you. And he didn't have any money, but they beat him and they left him all bloody and wounded. And then he didn't return to the ashram in the evening. So his devotees went out and found him. And they said, oh, master. And he was sort of semi-conscious, and he said, do you know who we are? And he said, yes, I know. You're the same God that in the morning you took care of me, and during the day you attacked me and beat me, and now you come and you take care of me again. It's just the same God behind it all. And so if we can see behind the changes, God isn't changed. God is eternal now. But if we can see behind every change that there is a presence, there's God's presence there, and to attitudes that help us to deal with that, acceptance of whatever comes, and calmness in the face of seeming disaster and difficulty, and detachment, just to have that little bit of whatever happens, we don't have to be right there. Oh, it's happening to me. We've shared this story once where we were in a car and Swami was driving, and we were going up into the mountains, and it started snowing, and the car went into a skid, and I was in the back seat, Swami was driving, Jyotish was in the front, and there was another woman sitting next to me in the back seat, and the car was spinning out of control, and there was traffic coming the other way, and she got hysterical, and she was screaming, Swami, Swami. And our car crashed and hit a bus. We weren't hurt. But after we crashed, Swami turned around and he said, what? And nothing changed for him. We were driving and it was good. Then we went into a skid and he was the same. And then we went to a crash and he was the same. So, because he lived in the presence of God. So to have that calmness and that detachment, no matter what's happening. And is that easy? No, of course it's not easy. Is it the way to find God? I think so. I haven't found him yet, but I think that's the right way to go about it. And I was reading recently, Master talking about whenever we have a problem, instead of trying to figure it out with our mind, we see a change coming. And what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? If we can get calm, he said, every solution will come to you from calmness. And Jyotish spoke earlier about intuition. When we become calm, then our intuitive abilities become heightened, and we can see how to move forward into the future.
Also, Devi implied it, but Swami had a wonderful sense of humor. And he had the ability to just look at life and kind of see its funny side. And so calmly turning around and saying what to a historical woman.
Hysterical.
She was historical too. Hysterical woman. Was a kind of a humorous way of dealing with the situation. So the ability to laugh at things is great. Swami would love jokes. We would often tell him jokes, and I'm going to tell you one. So Devi earlier mentioned about a tiger and a gazelle. This is a lion. Lion comes up to a little gazelle and he says, "Who is the king of the jungle?" And the gazelle said, shaking and shivering in fright, says, you are, my lord. Then he comes up to a zebra and he roars, "Who is the king of the jungle?" And again, the zebra says, "You are my lord, you are my lord." And then he comes up to an elephant and he says, "Who is the king of the jungle?" And the elephant just turns his back and starts to walk away. Well, the lion can't accept that, so he runs in front of him and said, "I said, who is the king of the jungle?" And the elephant picks him up in his trunk and throws him against a tree and starts walking away. And the lion says, "Well, you don't need to get so angry just because you don't know the answer."
So I think we're coming to the end
Yes,
of our time.
maybe one more question.
I don't know.
Yes, there is.
Avni, if I may ask,
Devi ji,
there's one
yes,
question.
there is.
Just one
There is
question.
question.
Sorry. Go
If
ahead.
something doesn't happen as per our wishes, could we accept it that God does not want that in our life?
Not necessarily. Many things happen that are counter to our likes and dislikes. And so just because it is against our wishes doesn't mean that God doesn't want it to happen to us. He may be quite happy to have it happen to us so we can get rid of those unwholesome wishes that we have.
But I remember Swami telling this story in the very early years of Ananda. He was working so hard to earn money through teaching to pay for the purchase of the land, which became Ananda Village. And at a certain point, one of the people that he had bought lumber from a lumber yard, and
on credit.
On credit,
and the owner of the lumber yard threatened to sue for repayment.
And that he would take possession of the land. And so was it, is that what God wanted? That everything Swami had worked for was thrown away, and his mission to serve Master was not being able to come to fruition. And so a friend of Swami's said to him, "Well, why don't you come over to my house after this had happened and have tea and you'll feel better?" And Swami said, "I don't care about how I feel. I need to figure out what I can do." And so just because something isn't happening, again, Jyotish was talking a lot about use of willpower. It doesn't necessarily mean that God doesn't want it. Maybe he wants you to put out a little more energy to make it happen. And that's what Swami did. And he was able to pay off that man and throw off that threat of foreclosure. But again, there aren't black and white answers. Every situation we need to see, God, what is it that you're trying to tell me? Am I really going down the wrong track? Or do I need to put out more energy to get over the obstacles? And that's a question that we all have to answer internally. So I just wanted to close. There's this wonderful book that we were looking at to prepare. You probably have it here in India. It's How to Face Life's Changes by Master. It's one of the Wisdom of Yogananda series. But he ends with, the book ends with this affirmation. And I invite you just to close your eyes and try to feel these words deeply within yourself. Beloved God, I know that I am not the body, not the blood, not the energy, not the thoughts, not the mind, not the ego, not the astral self. I am the immortal soul that illumines them all, remaining unchangeable in spite of their changes. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So maybe in sum, what we say is that the purpose of life's changes, as we find in this affirmation, is for us to realize we are none of these outward things. We are the immortal, changeless soul.
Thank you, Devi ji. We'll invite our audience now to turn on their video. heroes, and the technical team, if you can take us in the gallery view. Also, Guru Bhais who are online, in person in Pune, if you can come on the screen, we can all send 3 Oms and blessings to Jyotish and Devi ji.
How very nice to see all of you.
A lot of you. We're
Yeah,
looking at the gallery of all the faces. But we'll be in India, as Jyotish said, in September. In October, we'll leave mid-November. So we'll get a chance to be with many, many of you.
oh, it's so nice to see so many friends.
So let's rub our hands together, friends, channeling the gratitude, the blessings of our hearts, of our masters. Let's send these blessings to Jyotish and Devi ji. Oh.
And we
Thank you
thank
so
all of
much.
you. We thank all of you who follow Master's teachings and make them vibrant for all the receptive souls in the land of his birth in Mother India. God bless you all.
Have a wonderful, joyful, uplifted, and attuned day. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotish and Devi ji.